Welcome back. Today we are talking with Bonney. We are talking about mental toughness. And great first segment. There was a word you had in the first segment I want to touch on here as our first point, and that is confidence. So why is confidence so important here?
One of the biggest challenges to being humans is we all have a voice in our head that tells us everything we've ever done wrong, messed up, been embarrassed by, like all the data. It has it all. And anytime we're in a situation where it's uncomfortable or we need to figure something out, that voice of doubt is there squawking in our ear. And that makes having confidence really, really challenging. And so one of the things that I taught, and without that confidence in your resilience, dealing with the unexpected, dealing with uncomfortable stuff is very stressful. It's harder to be able to think clearly, hold it together like we were talking about. So with that confidence, it allows you to have a little bit of calm. And so one of the things I talk about in my book, Get Over It, is having a little sassy back talk for that voice in your head to be able to say, all right, yes, you're right. I did mess that up. I don't know this, and this could go really badly. And let's remember all the things that I have figured out, that I have done well, and reminding yourself of those things, because we grossly underestimate our ability to figure things out, And so part of building that confidence is reminding yourself of all the things that you have figured out in the past and the resources you have to figure things out in the future.
Is that like a network or support system?
Sure, that's part of it. It could be resources online, it could be human resources, and it could be your own resources. Pulling in any of that can help you deal with whatever it is you're dealing with.
I'm not sure how to ask this delicately, but there are times when people they say they have great confidence, but then I want to say this so nicely, but I know people will get angry in today's world. People can sometimes be oversensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So we deal with that because they will say their confidence, but then the next thing you know, one slightly thing, hey, I liked what you did yesterday, but, and then before you know it, they're my boss this or my colleague that, and it's like, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. So how do you deal with that kind of a situation with people who maybe aren't as confident as they think they are?
Yeah, and now we're getting into human interaction, communication, and building of relationships, which is a whole nother podcast, Alex.
Oh,
no,
wow, okay.
it's having that. So the challenge of human interaction is you can't control what anybody else does. And so as we're faced with people who don't have the confidence or don't have the self-awareness and don't have the communication skills, it's all we can do is be a role model. I mean, if we're in a boss employee situation, we may be able to do some development, some professional development. And that would start at the point of pointing out what you see in their behavior and why it's a challenge, and then having that conversation after. But you want to have built the rapport before you start to have that conversation, et cetera. But the key really in what I think in dealing with a lot of uncomfortable situations for ourselves is always questioning what we think we know, questioning what we think we know about ourselves. In that situation, that's an opportunity for us to look at ourselves again and say, oh, wow, am I doing that? And also, how could I role model great behavior to this person who you may not be able to change at all? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, I've run into some of those people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we all have, actually.
I have a difficult people survival kit of a series of videos of how do I deal with people who I can't fix, because you can't fix other people. And they're usually just fine without you. It's just an interrelational thing. But anyway, that's another.
Well, that brings up an interesting point.
Sure.
When that happens, and we get frustrated by other people, by how they respond, Is that because we have an issue with ourselves and our own mental toughness that we haven't recognized yet?
Well, so like it could be. And I always look at that in when I'm trying to build my own self-awareness, because again, I can't control what anybody else does. And I do this, and I just did this earlier today with another professional that I'm working with. I'm like, okay, hold on. You're all up in your shorts. What's going on? And could this be your reaction? Or is it actually what they did or said?
Mhm.
The question I ask is, how else could I interpret that? What else could be going on? I reframe it in my head to say their intent and the impact or my understanding may not be matching here. Let me start to think about what else could be going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. You got me thinking when you were talking that, like, okay, so if I have that, does that mean I haven't recognized something in myself yet? So it's
Highly possible. And in
yeah.
order to go through that process, we do need emotional intelligence and we do need mental toughness. We need to believe that there could be something about us that was contributing to that negative situation. And that requires confidence. That requires us to say, okay, cool, I might have been not a nice person in that situation, but I'm still a good person. I can face that negative thing without losing confidence in myself overall.
It's also not taking things, what would they call it, on a personal level as well. Would that fall into that area as well?
Yeah, I mean, it all falls into that self-awareness and self-regulation, emotional intelligence area where you start thinking about, okay, how else could I interpret this that wasn't about me? Because so often it's not about us.
Right.
And so, and the other question that I like to ask myself, which can get really tough in more difficult situations, is under what circumstances would I do that? Or under what circumstances would I say that? Because that really kind of opens up the possibility of that person not being just a complete jerk. Now, all of a sudden, I can put myself in their shoes and I can start to relate a lot better.
So empathy.
Yes. Having an understanding of their situation, or at least trying. Yeah.
So what other characteristics are there that help identify someone who is, has confidence and has that, is building their mental toughness? What other characteristics does a person like that show?
I like to put the characteristics under 4 different categories. Simple one is ability to deal with change. Just the ability because stuff changes all the time. People with strong mental toughness are like, cool, I don't like it, and we got this. It's okay. Second one is forward momentum. Do they have a goal? Are they looking forward to what it is we're moving towards? Why are we putting up with this discomfort? What's the larger picture here? So that's that forward momentum is another one. Third is our own internal self-awareness situation. So what's happening self-talk? How do I create an outlet for those negative emotions? Again, you talked about like writing the angry letter, right? I have a couch cushion out there that called DPS on me a couple times, like, because I will, if I'm super angry, I'll be like, okay, cool, let's go hit the pillow to get it out. And then it's like, okay, cool, now I can face this situation. Other than the couch pillow, nobody's hurt. And now I can face the situation in a much more intelligent way. That I know that about myself, right? So that's part of mental toughness, is what goes on in your own head. Not taking things personally is another piece of that. And then the fourth pillar is the social connections pillar. One of the huge outlets for humans in general, humans need to belong. We need to know that we have somebody that's got our back. And so having those social connections is a massive piece of that mental toughness as well. You remember earlier, as I was talking about building confidence in our resilience, it was what I have accomplished and what resources I have that could help me. And oftentimes that's other people, and that's that social piece. Even if it's just, hey, Alex, we need to go out for Margarita Monday because it's been a Monday already. Even just that. Break down the steam and keep going.
And that could be work, friends, work colleagues, neighbors,
Yeah.
fellow dog walkers in the dog park.
Yep.
I know I've suddenly, with my current dog, Lebo, we've gone to the dog park quite a bit, and suddenly I've got a larger network. We're all looking out for each other and saying, "Oh, well, if you need help with that, I'll come over and help." And wow, I never had that before.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
and it's really important. This is another thing we often overlook: how many resources we have. We forget, and we oftentimes, in the challenge of going forward so fast in life and the hustle and everything, we forget how many social resources we do have. And that's a great example of one where you might not have thought of that, but that probably recharges your battery when you're at the dog park. Hey, Gene, how you doing? Oh, that's fine.
yeah. It's actually nice when I go there, we go there. He's always excited no matter what, of course. But I see people I know there and it's like, hey, how are you? How are you? We just get chatting and it does actually feel good at the end of a work day to just walk across the street to the dog park and meet with other neighbors who are just finishing their work as well. And yes, we excuse the language, bitch and gripe, but it's actually feels good because we're getting it out of our systems. We're helping each other. Oh, you might want to try this and that. And we've done that. And it really makes a difference. And it's a network I didn't know was there until I started going there.
Right. And that refills your emotional energy. I bet once you get back, you feel more together and you feel like more,
Yep.
you've just given yourself a buffer of emotional energy so that later you don't fly off the handle at the kids or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I want to ask about fear. We touched on that in our live broadcast back at DRJ. How does fear play a part of this? And why does it play a part in this?
Fear was built to keep us alive. And so I love starting with that point because, it feels really crummy. It leads to a lot of, behaviors that aren't necessarily constructive. But ultimately, the fear comes from your brain's desire to keep the body functioning. Because back when our brains were invented, there was a whole lot more mortal danger than there is these days. So, you're working with a little bit of an older hardware system with your brain. It never got the update. And so any stressful situation, your brain's like, oh, we might die. And it gives you a little bit of that fear response, or maybe a lot of that fear response. And I firmly believe that the less we face uncomfortable things, the more comfortable we are, the more familiar everything is, the worse and worse we get at dealing with the fear. And we start to separate ourselves so much more from uncomfortable situations and from, unfamiliar things, that the fear starts to build up and build up. Because I just watched a TEDx talk yesterday, and she says it's never as scary as it seems. But because we have all of the things, that voice of doubt that I talked about earlier, telling us all the things we've done wrong and that we don't know in this year, then we've got all the social pressure about all the things there are to be scared of, and failure, which we don't want to fail, and letting people down, which we don't want to do. All of that together, if we're just standing there not doing anything, can really build up a lot of fear and anxiety in our bodies.
Is that because social pressures can feed our fears?
Absolutely.
What's
Without
that?
question.
FOMO, fear of missing out. FOMO.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fear sells products. Fear gets candidates elected. You think about how fear is used socially to impact and influence humans. It's amazing that we're all as mentally well adjusted as we are.
Yeah. I want to ask a little bit more of how we reduce our fears, but we're almost at the end of the time for our second segment. So I'm going to take that question for our next segment. Today, we are talking with Bonney about mental toughness, and we will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.